Hello, church family. Shane Smith. Today we're going to talk about one of the attributes of God, righteousness. And righteousness and justification or justice are kind of the same words. Grudem, in his theology book, talks about how in the Greek and the Hebrew, there's only one word for righteousness and justice, and it's one of the same family. And in the Old English, I found that at one point in time, it wasn't said that it was righteous, it was right wiseness. And I thought that was kind of interesting. But you know, the Word of God talks about God's righteousness. In Psalms 19:8, it says that the precepts of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. And in Isaiah 45, it says, I, the Lord, speak the truth, and I declare what is right. In Deuteronomy 32:4, it says, a God of faithfulness and without iniquity, just and right is he. You know, and when I think about righteousness and I think about how it is connected to justice, all of us have lived enough life at this point to understand the value of that. If you think about what that means to salvation and how God has impugned righteousness to sinners who believe in him, is profound. What if we lived in a place where it wasn't a righteous, just world? What would it be like if we lived in an unjust world? You know, we talk about the rules of man or the rule of law. Would you want to live in a place, in a world where it was the rule of man, and that at every whim and at every administration change, every kingdom that falls and comes, another one comes up, and the rules all change, and what was is now not? I mean, that would just be horrible, you know, to think of living in a world like that. You know, and all through the Bible, it talks about unjust weights and unjust measures. The people that come to my mind first and foremost is Samuel's sons, Hophni and Phinehas. And if you know the stories about those guys, I mean, they were just the antithesis of righteousness. But again, God impugning righteousness to our account, to sinners that believe and hear his voice is immeasurable. So it works out in two ways, you know, the justification side of it, the impugning of righteousness to those that believe, and it also works out in our sanctification when you think about righteousness. You know, I think of some of the synonyms that we talk about, the virtues of righteousness, goodness, virtues, upright, upstanding, decent, worthy, ethical, principled, moral, high-minded, law-abiding, just, honest, innocent, faithfulness, honorable, blameless, guiltless, irreproachable, sinless, uncorruptible. And it just goes on. There's 25 or 30 words when you look up the synonyms to righteousness and the virtues that it implies. You know, I think of our sanctification process. I think of what the church would be like if we could own these synonyms to righteousness. And of course, righteousness also blends into holiness and God's immutability, his ability to not change. When you connect God's righteousness to his immutability, his inability to change, we have a foundation, if you will, of our faith that is, I don't know, it's just hard to put into words what it does to the soul. It is the muscle behind God's truths. It speaks to what ought to be and not always what it is. We have a higher calling to God's righteousness. It It speaks in Romans 3:4. It says, "Let God be true, but every man a liar." Well, Christian, today I pray that this attribute of God, his righteousness, will bring a strength to your soul, an anchor to your soul. His immutability and his righteousness upholds the Christian like none other. It is not man-made. In God is righteousness. Well, until we meet again, blessings.